These problems with the early selection model led other researchers like Deutsch and Deutsch in 1963 to propose a late selection model. They said, okay, Moray found you could hear your name, and we found that people could hear some other words from their unattended ears too. So maybe the filter is later. At some point, you do process the full meaning of what happened in your unattended ear, but there's a deciding point. You have a filter right before it hits your conscious awareness where your attention kind of decides which messages to go with, to stick with, like in your left ear, and which ones to throw away. And it might keep a couple of those, like if it hears your name in the left ear, but it's going to throw away the rest of the stuff. You did process what it meant, but you just threw it away before you could remember it. So you would keep and pay attention to the information that's most relevant to you as a person, and that's why you would remember your name. Treisman had a different explanation for late selection. She said, well, maybe actually you're not processing stuff in the unattended ear. Let's say that filter is backed up, it's a little earlier, and you are shutting stuff out before you process the meaning. But what's happening in these dichotic listening studies is that you're switching your attention between ears. Even when you tell me you're paying attention to the left, and even when you're shadowing that left message really well, maybe you're still very rapidly switching over to the right sometimes and then coming back. And that's why you might catch a few things that happen there. And she actually demonstrated that we switch ears. She demonstrated that we shadow content when it switches ears. So in this picture here, in a dichotic listening study, we have this boy listening in a dichotic listening task, and he is supposed to be shadowing the right side. The right message is playing, when Bill was walking through the forest, and the story would normally go, a tree fell across his path. And in his left ear, there's a story going, if you want to buy a car, a bank can lend you the money. They told this boy in the figure to keep shadowing the message in the right ear. So he's supposed to go, while Bill was walking through the forest, well, the message switches ears, okay? So now the forest story goes to his left ear and the bank story goes to the right. He should be still listening to his right ear, okay? So if he is paying attention properly in this task, he should be going, while Bill was walking through the forest, a bank can lend you the money. And of course that doesn't make sense, but he's supposed to be repeating what he hears in his right or attended ear, no matter what it says. But what actually happens is that our research participants will go, while Bill was walking through the forest, and when the story switches ears, participants' attention switches ears. How do they know that the story picked up in the left ear if they weren't listening to the left ear? Okay, that shows that to some degree, they might have been switching over and listening in a little bit every now and then to the left ear. So they were able to catch really quickly when the message swapped ears and they switched over to the left ear and kept telling the story. It takes them a little time. They're slowed down at it, but they quickly swap over to that unattended ear. And to Treisman, she said, okay, that's not fully late selection. We know we have problems with that model. And it's not fully an early selection model, probably. I think it's something in the middle. So Treisman came up with attenuation theory. ¿Por qué no los dos? Why not both, right? Treisman came up with attenuation or middle selection theory. What she says here is, instead of an early selection filter where I shut out everything before I understand what it means, or a late selection filter where I fully process what everything means and then throw out the stuff I don't want, what if all messages are receiving a little bit of analysis? I'm sort of processing a little bit about what they mean, and when I get a sense that some of those messages are important, I'm going to turn up the volume on those and dedicate more attention to them. So she is saying we process on kind of a grammatical and maybe a low level of the meaning, but not like deep meaning. So we're processing a little bit about what messages mean, and then we pick which messages we want to stick with and turn up the volume on those. And that is it for attentional filtering theories.